Welcome everybody in to a standalone episode of The Dabbler. I am your host. I'm on my own today. I know I haven't posted in a long time. This episode is kind of going to be to fill everybody in on what's been going on with me, why there hasn't been a whole lot of activity at all this summer, and to kind of dive into some of the details regarding that. Full disclosure, several episodes have been recorded, but I just haven't quite been able to find the time and the energy to edit them and post them with everything that's been going on. Me and my family's life, I guess, just seems a little, not like disrespectful, but a little just kind of out of bounds to be, I don't know, being too just goofy and silly and kind of throwing out meaningless stuff. And hopefully this video will kind of explain why. It's not going to be very light. It's pretty heavy material. I brought some alcoholic companionship with me. A little bit of coffee, some water. Hopefully keep you guys somewhat entertained, or at least informed. I know some of you probably pretty interested in what I have to say today. So without further ado, we're just going to get right into it. So on April 3rd of this year, my daughter Cora was born. She was born with multiple heart defects, which we knew about at the ultrasound and had been having several appointments and meetings with cardiology and the ICU team over at Sacred Heart Hospital in Spokane to kind of prepare for what we were going to be going through. None of which really prepared us for what it was all going to feel like, what it was all going to be like. Anyway, she was born. She spent 22 days in ICU after birth. She had at 10 days old, she went into her first surgery, which was a coarctation repair, meaning the aorta, which comes out of the top of the heart and feeds blood throughout the rest of the body. That had a narrowing in it that was one of the heart defects. They went in, they widened it. She was about 5.5 pounds at the time, making that surgery really difficult. It was fairly successful considering the difficulty. It was widened. It was operating properly. And after 22 days, she came home with us. And she had a feeding tube in. So she wasn't able to breastfeed ever. She wasn't bottle fed at the time. She came home with a feeding tube, which was something new, something interesting. I was able to change the feeding tube, which I figured you had to be a doctor to do. So basically, I'm a doctor now, which is great. The feeding tube was interesting. We literally had a little feeding bag that we would put the breast milk into because my wife was pumping pretty nonstop to make sure that she had breast milk to have in her early life. And we would put the breast milk into the feeding tube, which into the bag, which basically connected through this pump, which would just pump the breast milk at whatever rate you choose into the feeding tube, which just feeds directly into Cora's stomach. So we did that for a while, for about a month after she came home, and then we were kind of introducing her to bottles and We got her to a point where she was able to get the tube taken out, which was a huge moment for us. Huge moment for her. We were able to bottle feed her, get her on a more regular schedule, more regular process of life as a baby. Sorry, it is hot in here. You'd think that at 10 o'clock at night it would be cool. It would cool down, but it's still almost 80 degrees, so pretty warm. I'll be wiping my brow pretty often, as necessary. Does the whiskey help? Probably not, but it does help in here and in here. See, so feeding tubes out. I'm just gonna kind of take you guys through this chronologically as best that I can. Did I write anything down to prepare for this? No. Just gonna kind of wing it, try and remember all of it. So she gets off the feeding tube. It's huge for all of us. We are kind of cruising. Things are going well. We have a cardiology appointment, and they do an echo on her heart, and they listen to it and everything. And the other two heart defects, because there was the aorta, the coarctation, and then there was a VSD, which is a ventricular something. I know it. It's just late. But it's a hole in the lower two ventricles of the heart, the left and right side, the lower ventricles. And that hole was big, considerably big. We knew that it was something that was going to have to be operated on. But that's something that they want to wait until the baby's as big as they can be to do the operation. It just makes it more likely to be successful, less adverse reactions, less risks, whatever. Makes sense. So there's the VSD in the lower ventricles, and then there's another hole in the two upper chambers of the heart, which was smaller and probably more manageable, potentially on its own, something that she could have lived with her whole life, potentially. But it was there, and it was the third defect. Basically, a heart with three defects is hardly a heart. It's not really doing what it's supposed to be doing. So the blood was being cycled through her lungs way too much. And it just makes babies sick. It's an unhealthy way to go about life. Luckily, after birth, the pressure in a baby's lungs stays pretty strong and pretty pressurized in the lungs for anywhere from 2 weeks to 2-3 months. And then that pressure will subside, which will kind of show the problems with any fluid in the lungs, any extra blood flow or whatever. And so we're thinking, hey, things are going great. She's off the feeding tube. She's happy. She's healthy. I mean, we didn't have any problems with her at home for 2 months. Couple weeks before the end of those 2 months, we had a cardiology appointment, and the cardiologist kind of looked at me and said something that proved to be pretty eye-opening. He said to me, I kind of wish something had happened by now. To which I was like, the hell are you talking about, doc? Like, why? What do you mean by that? Like, what sort of thing, first of all, and why do you want something negative to happen? Basically, he says her heart is not well at all. The echo shows it. But she's living a normal life, relatively. I mean, honestly, pretty normal altogether. She was gaining weight. She had kind of slowed down with the weight gain towards the end of those 2 months that she was at home. But she was doing okay. We were kind of cruising. Cardiologist tells us that. And he said, just looking at everything, her lungs, the heart, everything, something should have happened by now. And by something, he meant heart failure or lung failure or something to that effect, right? So he tells us this, and I obviously, my wife and I become very worried. We start to, we're stressing a little bit over that. Like, okay, well, what's that going to look like? How do we keep an eye out for that? Because he tells us that, and then we're just taking her home. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to handle heart failure. I don't know how to handle lung failure, And he said, well, she'll go pale. She'll get real sweaty. She'll have problem breathing. She may have problems eating, different things of that nature, right? So we say, okay. So we take her home. Um, July 7th, which is a Monday, I get home from work probably about 4 p.m. And I come home and Cora's in her bassinet in the living room. She's sleeping. She's peaceful. Everything's fine. My wife and our other 4 kids are all in the backyard playing, whatever, So I check on her. She's doing great. I go out into the backyard, talk to them, and then I go back in, gonna go shower after work and start cooking dinner. And she's waking up. And so I scoop her up and was gonna take her upstairs to put her, in the bassinet in my room while I take a shower, just so she's near me. And you kind of immediately after I picked her up, I felt the back of her head on my arm started sweating profusely, and she went pale, and her chest started really like caving in. She was breathing real hard. Um, I opened the back door and yelled at the wife, like, we got to go right now. Called my mom to come over, be with the kids. And we hopped in the car and we went to the hospital. That was 50 days ago today. And she's still there. 50 days without our daughter in our house is really hard. And we don't know when that is going to end. I'm kind of assuming we still have a couple more months to go before she comes home. So we get her. Sorry. So we got her out to the hospital, and we went to the Coeur d'Alene. We went to the Kootenai Hospital just because it's considerably closer. They got her stable. They took her in an ambulance with my wife to Sacred Heart. And I went home to be with the kids. They got her stable. And then, so the kind of the theory is that pressure that I was talking about earlier, the pressure in the lungs, the pressure had subsided. The pressure in the lungs, which happens naturally with every child. When the pressure subsided, what that pressure was doing was keeping the blood flow through the heart, through the hole, from the right side to the left side, was keeping that blood flow to a minimum because the pressure was just pushing against it. The other thing that also happened is when you have an unhealthy heart, it inflames. So her heart, even though she was still real little, 7.5, 8 pounds maybe at the time, her heart was so big that it was kind of just laying on her left lung. And her left lung, basically, the pressure subsided in the lungs and her left lung just collapsed. So they get her out there, they get her on oxygen, they get her stable, and they fear that she has this pulmonary vein disease, which And this is based on an EKG that they did where they noticed a faster blood flow through the pulmonary veins, which could mean one of two things. Either one, there's just way too much blood traveling through a regular sized vein, or the veins are too small, which would increase the speed of the blood through a smaller channel. So we had a cath lab scheduled, a catheter lab. It's basically kind of a non-invasive way that they can go in and do some heart stuff, do some heart and lung things, right? There's a pulmonary cath lab, there's a cardiac cath lab. So we had a cardiac cath lab appointment scheduled for a couple of weeks from where we are now, which is July 7th, 8th, right after she goes to the hospital, right? And so they are like, well, let's just move it up and do it right now because we're afraid that she might have these really small pulmonary veins, which is a really, really, really tough thing to treat, really dangerous, probably life-threatening. So this is the news we're hit with, which is obviously devastating. Something new, something we hadn't considered, we hadn't thought about, we hadn't planned for. And so a few days later, they take her down to the cath lab. This marks the second time that she goes under full anesthesia. She is now 3 months old and weighs about 8 pounds. So they take her in. They go in with their catheters. It's pretty cool. So they use x-rays and ultrasounds to guide their catheters. They move the catheters in and out and around and into the veins and into the arteries and into all the chambers of the heart, and into the lungs even. They could travel all over the place in there, and they do all that with ultrasound and x-ray vision, basically using those technologies to see what they're doing, which I would assume in the next 15, 20 years is probably an outdated thing, but right now it seems pretty cool. So they go in and they check the pulmonary veins, and thank God the pulmonary veins are fine. It's just a heavy amount of blood traveling through the pulmonary veins into the lungs, which is causing the increased velocity of the blood. But her veins are regular size, which is huge. While they were in there, they realized that the coarctation repair that I discussed earlier, while it was widened and it was functioning fairly well, still wasn't quite up to the standards that it should be. So they took a little balloon on the end of a catheter and they tried to blow it up to expand it, to try and expand that aorta. And they did, and it looked slightly better. We got to see all the images and the videos of all of them doing all this. And it widened it a little bit, it looked a little bit better, but there was still kind of, instead of like a natural arc traveling out the top of the heart, over the top and down, it kind of went out and over, and then it kind of kinked and turned at an angle and went down instead of like a continuous arc. And so that was something that they didn't like, so they tried to balloon it. They didn't really like the way that it happened, the way that it worked. But all in all, the cath lab was a good thing because it turns out she didn't have this possibly life-threatening disease. Not that everything she has isn't possibly life-threatening, but this is a particularly near impossible disease to treat. And so we were happy. This felt like a good thing. Cath lab went okay, felt good. She didn't have this disease. We thought that was a win. It was a win. But what we didn't know and what they didn't know is that she was carrying a virus when she went into the cath lab. And when the anesthesia hit her and knocked her unconscious and did what it's supposed to do. The virus then, and because of the virus, also a couple of bacteria that naturally live in her body, they decided that they were going to take over. So she comes out of the cath lab and she's very sick. They keep her alive for a couple of weeks. She's on a breathing. She's on a full ventilator, which is a breathing tube. She's undergoing antibiotics for the bacterial infection. She's on 4 different kinds of sedatives. All kinds of things going on. Anywhere from 8 to 12 different medications hooked up to several IVs in her body at all times. And honestly, realistically, they were keeping her alive for a week or two because she wouldn't have lived on her own. She fought hard. She pushed through it all. The bacterial infections were taken care of by the antibiotics. She kicked the virus, and things were a lot better. Then they had a decision to make. Her heart was not functioning well at all. The hole in the heart, now that the pressure in the lungs had subsided, the hole in the heart became extremely difficult for her body to try and deal with. They decided that they were going to go, after once all this stuff was taken care of, then they started slowly introducing feeds back and, weaning her off of the sedatives, which then means giving withdrawal medication because she was on fentanyl and Dilaudid and morphine and one or two other things. So she needed withdrawal medication to deal with being weaned off that. Plus, she's getting, kind of like some fats and some sugars just to try and maintain weight. And they introduce feed to her slowly so she doesn't get any sort of infection from that being introduced to her body again. They finally get her up to full feeds and they're like, okay, here's the plan. She needs to gain weight so that we can perform open heart surgery to fix both holes. And while we're in there, we're going to go in there and fully patch the aorta, take that weird little kink spot out of it and just patch it to where it's 100%. So that's the new plan. And at this point, she'd probably been in the hospital for 2 full weeks, I'd say, maybe a little bit more. We're not dealing with it very well. I don't know how you do. It's terrifying. I'll kind of get into how things have been for us during this process once I kind of get through the whole story of it all. I know some of you have been following around. I haven't posted a lot about what's going on Instagram or Facebook or anything, but some of you know what's going on. Some of you hopefully are finding this for the first time and hearing a tough situation and maybe learning from it, gaining something from it. So at this point, they're saying, okay, 6 to 8 weeks until we do open heart surgery. And at this point, they are still thinking, we're still thinking, let's get her healthy. Oh, by this time, she's off the ventilator. They take her off the ventilator. She does have oxygen assisting her breathing, but we're all thinking, the doctors and us, that once we get to a point, we can bring her home and we can spend the next 6 to 8 weeks-ish, maybe 4 to 6 weeks at that point, just getting her to gain weight and bringing her in for open heart surgery. And so that's the plan. We're okay with it. We're good with it. It all makes sense. We countless meetings, countless conversations with doctors, with nurses. By the way, huge shout out to the medical staff out at Sacred Heart Hospital. outside of one doctor who has the bedside manner of a brash 6-year-old child. Um, Everybody else is pretty incredible. Even she's incredible. Uh, you'd have to be to get to the position she is with her piss poor attitude. Um, but that's a personality thing, and I'm sure she's a great doctor. In fact, I believe she's a great doctor, but her she shouldn't be allowed to speak to parents. This is a tangent. I don't know why I'm doing this. If you're a doctor, part of your job is to look a parent in the eyes who has a lot of pain going on and a lot of fear and a lot of doubts, and give them good information with kindness, with empathy, right? Don't beat around the bush. Nobody needs their hand held around here. I don't need my hand held. But don't, like, give me good information, but give it to me in a way that isn't going to make me want to smack you in the head, right? That's the doctor's job. Anyways, I've gone off on a tangent. So, 6 to 8 weeks, all hands on deck. Let's get her to gain weight. We want to get her to 11 pounds, bare minimum, prefer 12 or 13 pounds. She's currently at this point 8 pounds. And so that's what they do. That's what we go for. We are finally able to hold our baby girl again, because with the sedation and the breathing tube and the antibiotics and the virus and the bacteria, we were not allowed to. So we haven't held our baby girl for 2 weeks, and we finally are allowed to again. And she's on full feeds, but she's not gaining weight. So this goes on for a week, maybe a week and a half. And we meet with them, and we kind of know, like, well, the goal was to gain weight. She's not really gaining any weight. I mean, an ounce here, an ounce there, but she's basically doing cardio full time because her heart is working so damn hard. So we go into this meeting and they say, okay, change of plans. We got to get this surgery done. She's not going to recover before we fix her heart. She's just not going to gain any weight. And we can't fix her lungs till we fix her heart. We can't fix her heart until she gains weight. Well, that's now off the table. She's not gaining weight. So now, and also they prefer to wait at least 6 weeks after a bacterial infection to put her back under anesthesia and open her chest up. But they were very good about explaining this to us, and they said, look, not all surgeries that we do here are done under optimal circumstances. In fact, probably not very many. So the surgeon was like, we can do this. It's not easy. She's little. She's not super healthy, but we can do this. So the plan changes completely. We keep her on feeds, but we monitor to make sure that it's not stressing her out in any way. So we're not pushing the calories. We're not pushing the amount too much. And this is all being done, I should mention, through a feeding tube, but the previous feeding tube that was through her nose to her stomach was an NG tube. And now she was switched to an ND tube, which basically bypasses the stomach and just goes straight into the intestines, so that when she's on a breathing tube and all this, her body doesn't have to bother with it being in the stomach. So she's being fed directly into her intestines with an ND tube through her nose. And so they're keeping the feeds going. They're keeping her on fats, keeping her on sugars, and they're just doing everything they can to optimize her health for surgery, which was, gosh, what was the date? August 10th-ish? A little over 2 weeks ago. Sounds about right. Maybe 2 weeks ago. Maybe it was August 12th. Anyway, so she's been in the hospital for a month. at this point. It's been 4 weeks, 4+ weeks. She's been in the hospital, and she is now going into open heart surgery. She's been optimized health wise as best as possible. She's too small. She's not healthy enough. She's not old enough. She's already been under anesthesia twice. She's had everything happen that I've explained so far. She's sick, very sick, not well. And now she has to undergo open heart surgery, which is a thoracotomy. Or maybe that's the one through the side. Again, not a doctor. But they just, if you don't know what open heart surgery is, they make a 6 to 8 inch incision down the center of the chest. They actually pull open the ribs completely to expose the heart. And they hook up the heart to a bypass machine, and they hook up the lungs to a machine, and they go in there and they fix it. So the surgeon lets us know beforehand, look, in between the right and left lower ventricles of the heart, one side, the left side, I believe, is that wall is kind of smooth, but the right side is this really muscular ribbon that runs down there, and that's where the hole was through. But being that it's just this muscular ribbon, there's all these kind of tines and rough surface right there, so it's not as simple as looking at a flat surface with a hole in it and patching it. It's not that simple. It's more like one side looks like the surface of a sponge and the other side looks like, I don't know, like heavy, for lack of a better word, maybe like heavy weeds. Or it's just super, super textured, I suppose. And the other side kind of looks like a sponge. So you don't really know where the hole starts. It's just in there, right? There's a big area in which blood is getting through. It's not like an opening. It's not a big hole. It's called a hole, but it's more of just an area where all this blood is passing through. So the surgeon lets us know that there's a decent chance that there's going to be some residual hole or holes allowing blood through after surgery, but that he's pretty confident that he can do a good job, and any residual hole that there might be won't be enough to be a problem. And they're going to do that, and they're going to fix the upper hole, which is a much simpler hole to fix, and they're going to go in and completely redo the patch on the aorta, and they're going to go do that. So surgery happens, and she comes out, and we meet with the doctor, we meet with the surgeon, and he's confident. He says, hey, everything went well. She's stable. She's good. She's closed back up. They leave wires attached to the heart in the chest. They leave them, and they come out somewhere around here, right? And they're attached to an actual EKG machine where if something were to happen and her heart stopped, they could just turn the machine on, and then the heart will pump and work while they go back in there and see what happened, right? Pretty cool, I thought. There's also these drain tubes that are coming out of her chest, like below the incision. There's these drain tubes that are draining fluid and blood from the procedure. And again, she's back to being completely sedated. The breathing tube's in. And we're like, okay, great, another win, right? We're like, this is a win. First win was she didn't have the small pulmonary veins. Thought that was a big win, but the cath lab proved to be pretty bad for her at the time because she got super sick. Then we're like, okay, open heart surgery went well. Doctor's confident that he closed the hole minus a small residual hole that he didn't think was going to be a problem. Upper hole fixed, aorta fixed. She's sewn back up. She's good to go. And then, we just got to get her healthy enough to take the breathing tube out and start assessing her lungs, which the one was collapsed previously that I had mentioned. And because of all the extra blood flow through the hole, there was a lot of extra blood flow to the lungs. Therefore, the lungs were not healthy at all. So, like, okay, now that the heart's done, sweet, let's get on to fixing the lungs. Which leads us to about now. Today, she had another cath lab operation because the residual hole left behind post surgery was too big. So basically, what she has in her lung, let me backtrack a smidge. What she has in her lungs is what's called pulmonary hypertension, which is just the blood flow at the lungs. That blood pressure is too high. So she has high blood pressure in the pulmonary arteries and pulmonary veins. And that is what is causing her lungs to be very unhealthy. She has pulmonary hypertension. Pulmonary hypertension can be treated and cured in anywhere from a few weeks to a few years. Kind of depends on how long it goes on, how severe it is, how the patient reacts to the medication that helps with that. The medication, what it does is it slows down that blood pressure. It slows down that whole pulmonary vein situation. It just slows it down so that it's not, basically overstimulating the lungs and making her lungs breathe super fast and fill up with blood from the heart. So, but in order to give that medication that slows down the blood pressure, and if some of you out there are medical professionals, I might not be 100% accurate on this. This is my understanding of what's been going on because I've been dealing with it for the past 4.5 months. But I could have some details wrong for sure. But my understanding is they can't give her that pulmonary hypertension medication, which surprising enough is sildenafil, which is the main active ingredient in drugs like Viagra and Cialis, which I thought was interesting. Blood flow. I guess it makes sense. Anyways, they can't give her that until they're confident that there isn't a lot of blood passing through from the right ventricle to the left. So through echoes, they realize there's still too much blood passing through. Basically, it should be a ratio of 1-to-1. Blood going through the whole body and blood circulating to the lungs should be 1-to-1. But it was like 1.25-to-1. So basically, an additional 25% of blood was traveling through the lungs, which was causing fluid buildup and, causing her lungs to not work well at all. So she's still on a breathing tube and all this stuff leading up to today. So the goal today was to go in with a catheter, same way I described it to you before, but to install a device, basically a plug, but not a plug. Install a device. First, find where the blood's coming through in what's not an easy place to look. I described that too. It's spongy and textured and not just a hole, right? Find that spot, get a wire through it, get a tube through it, get a device in there to kind of get to stick in that spot, which will then kind of bond with the heart, bond with that that wall between the left and right ventricles, and stop the blood from flowing through, right? So that was today. Today is, like I said earlier, day 50 that she's in the hospital. And for the 4th time, she went under complete anesthesia. And it went well. Um, do I feel overly confident that this is going to be the beginning of recovery? How could I? Every time I thought we've gotten a win so far, it comes with other stuff. Um, so I don't really know what to think at this moment. It's 10:30. She got back into the room and comfortable by about 5, so about 5.5 hours ago. And but it worked. The device was successfully installed in the right spot. Um, from everything, they did some initial testing and the results were good. So hopefully in the next few days that information is proven accurate and they can actually begin to assess her lung situation and treat her pulmonary hypertension and lead towards us coming home with her. Um, we need her home. I, I don't really know how to keep doing this. I know my wife feels the same. It's just you just kind of I don't know. Wake up every day and do your best and go to sleep praying that it's all gonna work itself out. I've been of the belief that she's gonna make it. I haven't wavered from that. It does feel like we're running out of options though. If this device weren't to work, I don't know what other options there are. Of course, I'm not a doctor, so maybe there are more options, but hopefully it works. Hopefully the initial tests are correct and she can start finally kind of turning that arrow upwards and start recovering and work towards coming home. Coming home with us. Yeah, so that's the story. Um, that's her story. That's Cora's story so far. Um, I don't think I missed any details. In fact, I probably given far too many. You guys are probably bored to shit with all this medical stuff. Excuse my language. Um, but that's the story, and we continue to fight. We continue to push through. It's been really hard. I'm sure that's not surprising to anybody. If it wasn't really hard, we would be terrible people. Um, I know our kids have felt it because they're at grandma's or at an aunt's or with a babysitter every day. Um, I've been working pretty much full time. My wife goes during the day, usually mid morning, gets a babysitter, goes out there, sits with her, talks to the doctors and the nurses. We just want to be present as much as we can be, even though we can't do anything. We can't hold her. We haven't been able to hold her for 3 weeks now. Again. And then I go home from work, and if I have the time, then I head out there after dinner and spend some time with her and come home. But I also have to manage spending time with my kids here as well, and it's hard. It's work. It's raising kids. It's going to the hospital, which is 30 minutes away. It's babysitters. It's kids throwing fits because they're not at home. and um, they're kind of being dragged all over the place, and I know that it affects them. It's just a crazy routine for them to live the entire summer. Well, since July 7th for the last 7 weeks. And it's hard. Um, huge thank you to my mom, who's the most, I don't know, the kindest, most generous, most helpful person I will ever know. She takes them often. My sister as well. My sister Anna, she helps so much. We have a few babysitters that we rely on that we've had come in when family's busy because it's every day. It's 50 days now. And there's maybe 1 or 2 days total that we haven't needed a babysitter. That's a lot. It's a lot for my mom, a lot for my sister. We've got babysitters. We pay them decent. Um, I'm working, I'm going out there in the evenings, spending less time with my wife and kids than I'd like because I gotta be present out there. If not for her sake, because she won't remember or care, but for my sake, and also kind of for the sake of the whole medical case, really, because I want the doctors to see me every day. Um, I want them to know that I'm here and that I'm paying attention and that I know what's going on. I don't want them to leave information out. I want them to tell me what's going on. And so I want to be informed all the time. Um, yeah, but it's been insane. And obviously, with all that going on, sitting in here with Ben and goofing off about sports and whatever's going on in the world and making inappropriate jokes and just effing around, which we've done a few times. But when it comes down to like editing it and putting it up, seems a little out of pocket, I guess. Not that we don't need levity in this life, and not that we've been miserable for 50 days, because we haven't been. You find out real quick what your survival instincts are when you're pushed in this kind of way. Because human beings are survivors. If we lost her, we'd survive. It would be devastating, heartbreaking, but we'd survive. We already lost a child at a week old for no reason whatsoever. SIDS was the diagnosis. And it threw us into an entire different life. I view the world differently. I view myself differently. I view my wife differently. I view my kids differently. I view my faith differently, for good and bad. Um, yeah, losing my son, Damon, threw me into a different world. And totally different life, totally different mentality. But I survived. My wife survived. We've had 3 beautiful sons and a daughter since then. So we're surviving. It doesn't always feel like we're gonna. I'll tell you that. Like, it's really freaking hard. Seeing her hooked up to a breathing tube and a drain tube and a feeding tube and anywhere from 8 to 12 medications, and there's heart rate monitors and oxygen level monitors and and they're running labs often, and there's a nurse with her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're not allowed to leave the room. We can't hold her. She's just there. Um, yeah, it's like the hardest thing we've ever had to do. And yet we have a family to raise and bills to pay and meals to make and cars to maintain and a house to maintain and we got a fixer upper a couple years ago. It ain't done. There's plenty of shit to do here. Yeah, it's nuts. And I'm not looking for sympathy by saying any of this. If anything, I'm just kind of letting it out. Don't really talk about it much. I don't really know how to talk about it much, typically, but it's devastating at times. And at times, you just wake up and you go to work and you get home and you make dinner and you hang out with the kids for a bit and you drive to Spokane and you sit with your daughter for half hour, and then you come home and you pour yourself a glass of whiskey. Cheers. And you get up the next day and you do it all over again. And that's just that human nature, that survival instinct, because sure, it could drop me to my knees any given day and I could wallow in it and feel sorry for myself and my wife and my kids and my customers and my company and my career could all hurt and suffer from it. But I'm not here in this world, in this life, to manage my emotions. I'm here in this life and in this spot in the world to lead my family and to lead my wife and to raise my kids and to hopefully have some sort of control on the outcome of my daughter's health. And I don't have time to wallow in it. That being said, I have a lot of help. There was a GoFundMe started that the first couple of times it was mentioned, I didn't want to do because we'll survive. I've always known that I'm a survivor, that I'll always figure it out one way or another. Not that I'm too proud or too pompous to accept help, but I just never think that I need it, I guess. Like, legitimately, I'm like, we're fine. We're fine with money. It's fine. And then when we were asked again, I think it was like the third time we were approached about it, we're like, okay, well, if you want to start one, that's fine. And wasn't thinking it was going to be much, and people are extremely generous. There were several big donations. I think it's up over $6,000, which is huge. And I wanted to address that because I guess I want people to know what I'm going to use it for. First, I'm going to use it for babysitters and my mom, who has helped us out immensely. Do something really nice for her. Do something nice for my sister. And then when Cora comes home, which I still believe she's going to, and she better come home. When she comes home, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off of work so I can be with her, be with my wife, be with my kids, and give her the love that she's been missing, because I'm worried about. She hasn't had physical interaction with her parents, her loved ones, for 3 weeks. And yeah, she's kind of sedated. or at least she is now. She wasn't really a week ago. I mean, barely. She's kept comfortable because she has a breathing tube in, but it can't be good for her mentally to not be held, to not be comforted, not be loved. Like she just lays on a bed. And they put a mobile on above her head and they play music and they give her these little stuffed animals and a mirror to look at. And she likes these things. And when she's not on the breathing tube, they do some like play therapy and things to keep her active and keep her moving. But not having that, like, not being held, I know there's theories out there that that's really detrimental to a person's personality and self-esteem, self-worth, and so I'm a little worried about that. So that money is solely to thank the people who have helped us, and so that when she does come home, I can take some time off comfortably without stressing about family that I'm leading and bills that I have to pay. So yeah, I didn't bring it up to get more donations, but I did bring it up so I understand if it looks that way. And to everybody who's donated on there, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Even the smallest donations on there, huge, huge thank you. I know that I try and help people as much as I can when they're going through difficult things, whether it's with time or money or resources or whatever. I always strive to, and I've always believed that comes back around. Whatever you give comes back around. Whatever you take comes back around too. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and we're coming up on about an hour now that I've been sitting here talking to you guys, and I just want to end by saying thank you to everybody who's reached out to me and my family. Say thank you to my babysitters. Say thank you to my family for watching the kids. Say thank you to the staff who are dealing with her care. To the people who brought us meals. To the people that help, take the kids to the park for a couple hours just because. And people who just stop by to spend time with us here and there. Huge thank you to everybody. And huge thank you to everybody for hopping on and praying with us. I know I asked for prayers several times, and hopefully some of those are still coming. Damn, it's hot in here. So yeah, thank you to everybody. And if you have it in you to continue to pray for Cora, please do. She has a life to live. She has a family who loves her, who can't wait to have her home. And yeah, I guess that's it, man. I don't know what else to say. Thank you so much for listening. If you could share this story, maybe it'll help somebody going through a similar thing. When you're going through something difficult, just lean on the people that you love. Lean on the people who love you, but most importantly, lean on your damn self. Because human beings are survivors. And at the end of the day, you're going to survive. You're going to find a way through it, no matter how impossible or hard it may seem. I'm not some golden boy or some perfect story for people to mold their lives after. Far from. I'm a very flawed human being. We all are. But all we can do is wake up every morning and do your damn best, you know? Things are going to happen. Things are going to fall where they fall. And how you react to that and how you deal with that and how you push through that is what makes you who you are. So thank you so much, everybody. God bless you. And please, please pray for Cora. Pray to my son, Damon Joseph, who was baptized and is in heaven. And hopefully one day in the next month or two, Cora will be home with us and all of this insanity will be behind us. And it'll just be tons and tons of doctor's appointments, which will drive me crazy, but it will be moving forward. And she will be living her life the way she was meant to. Bye, everybody.